Om Sadashiva Samarambam Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Param Param. Om Om Shanti 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 Om. Namaste. There is quite a gap between my voice here and the reach to reach you there, you know. So you let me know if the signal is too poor. I have to close my video. Please let me know. I can tell that it's taking a long time for the signal to reach you. Sloka 32. Hello, Claudio. Okay. Claudio was frozen for some time. So the verse 32. If Kutastha were contradictory to ignorance and its obscuring power, then, so if Kutastha, which is consciousness, manifest as the Jiva-Atma, the Atma, the reflect consciousness of the nature of limitless consciousness, if the phenomenon called Kutastha or Chidabhasa were contradictory to ignorance and contradict to avidya and or avarana power, then who is the experiencer of this obscuring? No? So if Kutastha were inimical or contradictory to Maya and to the power to conceal reality or the power of avidya or avarana, if consciousness were contradictory, who is the experiencer of this obscuring? Meaning to say, if consciousness would be contradictory, there would be no question of avarana, vikshepa, the power. There will be no question of ignorance, because Kutastha, being inimical and a neutralizer or contradictory, immediately would shed its light and finish with avarana and vikshepa. So evidently, Kutastha is not contradictory to ignorance and avarana and vikshepa, which are the powers producing this ignorance. So if they are not contradictory to this ignorance, because we see that ignorance survives it and coexists with consciousness, with Kutastha, with reflected consciousness, is contradictory to ignorance? No, because ignorance survives. So I know ignorance, and ignorance, in spite of that, does not disappear. Okay, so who is the experiencer of obscuring? Of this power of obscuring is something that somehow does not destroy the obscuring power, although it does so on the individual level in the case of self-knowledge. So, and this verse is going to beautifully explain the two distinctions between Kutastha and Jiva, okay? Which is what we have been looking for, the subtle distinction between Kutastha and Jiva in that chart that we have seen. On one side, the Jiva, on the other side, Kutastha. So Jiva is under the spell of ignorance. Kutastha is a Jiva, which is not really a Jiva because it's reflect consciousness with the knowledge of having the same nature as original consciousness. So we have Jiva under the spell of ignorance, and Kutastha, which is consciousness manifest as the Yoni. It is the discriminating knowledge which is contradictory to ignorance, as is seen in the knower of the truth. So there, and then he gives a hint here. There is a certain discriminating knowledge that is contradictory to ignorance. And this discriminating knowledge is seen in the knower of the truth. So he brings the point, he brings us to the understanding here. He points to the understanding that consciousness by itself is not contradictory to ignorance, but there is a certain knowledge, viveka, yeah? A certain discriminating knowledge, which is contradictory to ignorance, okay? So it's not that consciousness is contradictory or inimical to ignorance, but there is a knowledge revealed by consciousness through the Lord of this universe. So this knowledge, this belonging to Mithya, being a phenomenon within Mithya, it is contradictory and inimical to avidya and avarana. Do you guys follow so far? Okay, every time I need a break, I ask you guys something and then I wait to go, then come back and I can have a drink. So it is this body of knowledge based on viveka. Viveka between what? Between Kutastha and Jiva. So consciousness and the intellect, the mind. So the mind on the spell of ignorance and the mind with the knowledge in respect to one's nature. So it is this discrimination between this viveka, in between consciousness and the ego, which is determined, which is going to determine the neutralization of ignorance. So this one is going to be inimical, contradictory, and a neutralizer of ignorance. And then he ends the verse saying, as is seen in the knower of the truth. So what do we see in the knower of the truth? We see the absence of avarana and avidya. So we see in the knower of the truth the absence, the removal, the absence of avarana and avidya. Of course, this removal, the removal of this ignorance is not the removal of all ignorance, is the removal of the most fundamental ignorance, which is ignorance in respect to one's true nature, true self. And Swami Paramarthananda unfolds it so beautifully. So let's go slowly here. Vidyaranya reconfirms the conclusions he has arrived at by giving more detailed logic. Suppose we assume consciousness and ignorance are inimical, or inimical or virodis. I forgot the meaning of virodis. Anybody remember? I did not take note.
That means opposites, Lindo.
Yeah.
In opposition.
In opposition.
Opposites.
Yeah. Yeah, we have translated before as inimicals, yeah. Assume consciousness and ignorance as inimical or virad, synonymous of inimical, then they can never coexist. If consciousness would be real inimical, and that's where the distinction between Kutastha and Jiva are going to come into place and clarify that point to all of us. So consciousness, if we assume that they are inimical, then they would never coexist. But it is a fact. It is our experience, our direct perceptive experience that consciousness and avarana and avidya, they coexist. Why? Because we are aware of ignorance. Sometimes people are not aware of their ignorance, but ignorance is operating and it's clearly experienced by others. And then the same person comes in contact with the guru, and then he becomes aware of his or her ignorance, which is again another proof that consciousness is coexisting with ignorance. So therefore, they are not inimical. And we have understood that looking at logic from different angles. If they cannot coexist, the problem would be that one can never be conscious of ignorance. So how beautiful, how clear, and how simple. If ignorance and consciousness, meaning to say pure knowledge, if they would not coexist, we would have a huge problem here. Nobody would be able to be conscious of one's ignorance. Nobody would have the knowledge of ignorance. Why? Because consciousness is inimical to ignorance. And in that case, would be inimical of all kinds of ignorance, not only self-ignorance, but ignorance about everything, So we would go around looking, and there, well, where is ignorance? There is no ignorance because I know everything here. I know the self as my own self, and I know everything in the mind of Shwara, because now I am pure sattva, So, but that's not the case. Otherwise, we would say that nobody has ever been conscious of ignorance. Nobody has ever experienced ignorance, which is not the case. It would mean that nobody would never know ignorance. And if you cannot know ignorance, you cannot talk about ignorance. And we talk about ignorance all the time. Life is nothing but make known the unknown, isn't it? So life is all about trying to make known the unknown, make known what we are ignorant about. That's how we grow in knowledge. We talk about only what we know, and we know of ignorance. If consciousness cannot coexist with ignorance, I will not know my ignorance. And if ignorance is not known, the student-guru relationship is not possible. So if I'm not aware of my ignorance, if I'm not aware of my ignorance of chemistry, I would never go to a school of chemistry. The relationship between the professor of chemistry and myself and the student would not be possible. Nobody is aware of one's ignorance of chemistry. But if I'm aware of my self-ignorance, I'm aware that I really not quite sure about what I am, and then I would go to a guru. So the guru-disciple-student relationship would be impossible if we would not coexist with our ignorance. We would need to be able to coexist to the extent that we are aware of our ignorance. Therefore, we go to the guru and then we ask Guru, please help me to remove my self-ignorance. Otherwise, such a relationship would not be possible. Our sampradaya would not exist. The Vedas would not exist, and so on. The definition of student is one who knows his ignorance, and she wants to remove this ignorance, and therefore he goes to a teacher, she goes to a teacher for removing ignorance. So the definition of student is one who knows his ignorance. This is a beautifully put statement, because if we are not aware, we will never look for a teacher whatsoever field of knowledge we are ignorant about. So he is aware of ignorance, and therefore alone there is jijnana. You know how to spell that? How to pronounce that? I forgot. I don't listen to Swamiji anymore, and I keep forgetting the pronunciation. Jinyasa. Jinyasa is the student. alone there is, if he's aware of ignorance and then the student is present. The teacher should know that I don't have ignorance. The teacher should know that I don't have ignorance. Otherwise, a teacher is not a teacher. It is a pretender. Oh, I forgot how to say that. If he does not know, he does not have ignorance, with what conviction he can take the role of a teacher. So if the teacher does not know that he has removed his ignorance, he will not have the conviction, the charismatic conviction. The guru, the teacher, is a valid teacher when he's familiarized with the teaching methodology and when he has a full conviction in respect to the removal of his or her self-ignorance. Otherwise, he does not have authority. He does not, or she does not have the charismatic impact to really transfer trust in the scriptures, because the trust in the scriptures has to be developed through the trust in the guru. Guru is the link, and if the guru is not a good representation of that, a good link of that which removes ignorance. So the removal of ignorance should have the ignorance removed. Otherwise, his or her words are not going to have the same impact. They are not going to have the inspiring impact, the Shraddha impact. The very Guru Shishya, Shishya student. So Jijnasa, I have to look to see what is this one. I'm going to look later or not now. Okay. The very Guru Shishya Sambandha, his relationship guru-student is possible only if there is the presence of ignorance in the student side and the absence of ignorance, self-ignorance on the teacher side. This is possible only if consciousness and ignorance coexist, of course. Ignorance will not be known if consciousness and ignorance are opposed to one another or neutralized. If consciousness neutralizes ignorance, ignorance will not survive because it was neutralized. Therefore, ignorance will not be recognized in the mind of anybody, and nobody will ever look for a teacher to remove an ignorance that is not recognized or existent. Swami Shimayananda gives us a beautiful example, and I loved this one. The bridegroom will be taken in the night with a light on the head of a person. So I want you to help me, Mark, maybe. Bridegroom, what is the meaning of bridegroom?
This is the male in a marriage. So the bridegroom is the male person,
okay.
the man in the marriage.
Yeah, okay. I was suspecting something like that. So, and the bridegroom will be taken in the night with a light on the head of a person. So there is a person, the person is taking a light attached to one's head. And this person asked the master where I should keep the light. And the master says, keep the light wherever there is darkness. So now there is darkness everywhere. And this person keeping the light on his head is somewhat in trouble because there is darkness everywhere. Wherever this person went, there was no darkness. So now just imagine the situation of this person. He has light attached to his forehead, and then he looks around and darkness there, and then when he turns to that, and then darkness was dispelled. Everywhere he looks, he finds no darkness. Why? Because in this case, light is a neutralizer of darkness. So that's the analogy. But then he says here, consciousness is a unique light which can illumine even the presence of darkness. So the visible light, the physical light, cannot illumine darkness as the symbol of ignorance. You understand? And there is an aspect in our human experience, which is knowledge, that is going to illumine certain ignorance and is going to dismiss, dispel, neutralize, or remove that ignorance. Okay? So there is such a thing, which is knowledge of a certain subject that does dismiss or dispel ignorance, the same way that light in the forehead of this person was finding no ignorance, because whatever he would turn, the ignorance would be dispelled, gone. So there is a certain light that is opposed to darkness, but not consciousness itself. Because consciousness is a unique light which can illumine the presence of ignorance, being a symbol of darkness. So it's a unique light that illumines and reveals knowledge and ignorance. It illumines and reveals itself as this knowingness power, and it reveals the ignorance in the mind of the Jiva Atmas. We are conscious of darkness, no doubt about that. Consciousness illumines not only the external darkness, but also the mental knowledge darkness of ignorance. So we are all conscious of darkness. That should be enough to say, okay, I am a conscious being, but still my conscious experience here does not dispel darkness around me. I need to pay electrical bill and switch on the power. So we coexist as consciousness with darkness. But consciousness illumines not only the external darkness, but it also illumines another kind of darkness, which is ignorance in respect to whatsoever knowledge. Consciousness is going to be illumining ignorance, right? So far, so good. We are conscious of darkness. Consciousness is illumines not only external darkness, but also the internal darkness in the form of ignorance about this or that. Consciousness, therefore, is not opposed to darkness in respect to ignorance, okay? So ignorance here, darkness is symbol of ignorance. Consciousness is not opposed to darkness when darkness is being symbolized as ignorance, okay? Or when ignorance is symbolized as darkness. In that case, consciousness is not going to be opposed. Consciousness is not going to dispel that darkness. Therefore, we must conclude that consciousness and avidya, avarana, they are not inimical. They are not opposite to one another. They are not, exclusive to one another, okay? If consciousness is not exclusive or inimical to ignorance, it means consciousness cannot destroy ignorance. Therefore, Ajnana, nasa cannot be done by Kutastha Chaitanya. This is really quite something. So it is building slowly, beautifully, no? With such a skill, gradually, until we can see clearly and appreciate beautifully the, the beauty of these teachings of Vidyaranya Swami in this chapter 6. If consciousness is not inimical to ignorance, it means consciousness cannot destroy ignorance. And then we would say bad news. So consciousness is coexisting, it's even friendly. Before, in the previous verse, we said that they are good friends. You know, they sleep in the same bed and so on. Very intimate friends. So if consciousness is not inimical to ignorance, it means that consciousness is not going to destroy ignorance. So therefore, Ajnana, nasa, cannot be destroyed by Kutastha Chaitanya. So this Kutastha Chaitanya is just consciousness manifest as reflected consciousness. And then now we're going to move into the distinction of what it is, this Chidabhasa. And here Vidyaranya presents it in two levels. This reflected consciousness in its most fundamental nature is pure limitless consciousness, is not inimical to ignorance, okay? But when some other ingredient come into play, and then it becomes inimical to ignorance. Fundamentally, reflected consciousness, which is of the nature of pure, limitless original consciousness, is not inimical to ignorance, and that is Kutastha, okay? It's not contradictory, it's not neutralizer of ignorance, okay? So therefore, this ignorance cannot be removed by Kutastha Chaitanya, okay? You remember Kutastha was on the right side of the chart, and then the Jiva on the right side, okay? Kutastha here is consciousness manifest as reflect consciousness of the nature of original consciousness, okay? It is still annoying, a conscious power which does not have the power to neutralize or remove ignorance unless something is added to reflected consciousness. And this other thing added to reflect consciousness is what? Knowledge, okay? Knowledge, specific knowledge that are going to be specifically neutralizing specific ignorance. Therefore, Kutastha Chaitanya, this consciousness that appears as the individual, but it is in nature pure consciousness, reflected consciousness. Therefore, this consciousness is not the remedy for neutralizing avarana and avidya. If Chidabhasa Chaitanya would be inimical to ignorance, nobody would ever have any ignorance. So if everybody as reflect consciousness would automatically dispel all ignorance, we would never be aware of ignorance in Mithya. And without ignorance, we would not really progress, because the purpose of life is to know, make known the unknown, experience and know, extract knowledge until you are interested in a certain self-knowledge. So ignorance is the base. And if this Chidabhasa Chaitanya was inimical or a neutralizer of ignorance, we would never have had any experience of ignorance. We would not be aware of any ignorance, and we were never going to look for the guru. If Kutastha Chaitanya as well, Chidabhasa Chaitanya also is not inimical to ignorance. Now he is using another term, Chidabhasa Chaitanya, reflected consciousness, Kutastha Chaitanya. Also, if both are not inimical to ignorance, then ignorance cannot be destroyed. So, end of the discussion here. So, if this Kutastha Chaitanya, which is a different term to refer to this reflect consciousness of the nature of original limitless consciousness, if this Kutastha Chaitanya, they are not inimical to ignorance, then ignorance cannot be destroyed ever, okay? So they are not inimical, they don't acknowledge any ignorance, but yet the jiva experience ignorance, but we have consciousness which cannot do the job because it's not the remedy. You know, the Chidabhasa in its original nature is not the remedy as well. Then ignorance would never be destroyed, and we would be living in an incredible condition. Okay, we would be suffering of something which fundamentally is ignorance, but not knowing that our suffering comes from ignorance, because Chaitanya consciousness, reflect consciousness, or Kutastha consciousness would be neutralizing ignorance, and okay, I suffer here, but I have no idea because I'm not aware of the root cause of my suffering, which is ignorance, because reflect consciousness is dispelling all ignorance about everything, including the most fundamental ignorance, which is self-ignorance. And then Swamiji comes and says, but Vidyaranya says that there are two types of Chidabhasa. There are two types of reflected consciousness, okay, of Chaitanya, Chidabhasa Chaitanya. One is Antakarana Pratyabimba Chaitanya, and the second is Antakarana Vritti Pratyabimba Chaitanya. So Antakarana, as some of you may remember, it means to say the mind, and the mind has several functions, as we know. Though there are several aspects of the mind, the emotional aspect, the memory aspect, the feeling, the intellect, and the ego. So this is what configurates what we call Antakarana, okay? So we have the Antakarana Pratyabimba, which we could, for the sake of simplifying the language, we could call the subtle body, the reflecting medium, okay? There is a subtle body, Pratyabimba reflector, Chidabhasa, which is Chit, consciousness reflect. So there is a subtle body, Pratyabimba, reflection of consciousness. And this Antakarana Pratyabimba Chidabhasa is Samanya Chidabhasa, okay? Is Samanya Chidabhasa. But Antakarana Vritti Pratyabimba Chidabhasa is Vishesha Chidabhasa. So now, what is the difference here? And the difference here can be very nice illustrated if we take the analogy of yoga or the yogi, okay? So we know that the Antakarana is a reflector of consciousness, is a Chidabhasa. It's going to reflect consciousness. And this consciousness is going to be reflect according to the qualities or the conditions or the configuration, proportions of the three energies operating in the Antakarana, in the subtle body. Okay, so when we become a yogi, we're going to meditate. We're going to develop such a beautiful, clear, mirror-like reflecting medium that the reflection of consciousness is going to be very, very faithful to original consciousness. Okay, and then what we have there? We have one kind of reflection. One is a reflection in the mind, okay, in which the reflection is called Antakarana Pratibimba Chidabhasa, and it's equal to Samanya Chidabhasa. Samanya is the ordinary, common, original consciousness, okay? It is the same. It's not fluctuating. Why? Because the mind of the yoga in Samadhi Yoga, in Nirvikalpa Samadhi, or in Savikalpa Samadhi, is there as a reflector, producing a certain light, yeah, of consciousness, which is there. But that light of consciousness reflecting the mind of the Samadhi Yogi, that is appearing as pure knowledge, is not the remedy to remove or neutralize or to cancel ignorance, as we have seen in several passages of our scriptures or the unfoldments. So if we have a very sattvic reflection, it is a Pratibimba Chaitanya, it is a Chidabhasa, okay? And it's said to be Samanya, yeah? It's called to be Samanya. Why? Because it is original, it is unmodified, okay? It's pure reflection. And this pure reflection, without a vrit operating, without any notion or concept. You see, self-ignorance is a concept. The only remedy is another concept to destroy self-ignorance. If the mind is just in the state of samanya, reflection, samanya consciousness, okay? It is the ordinary, same consciousness, never changing consciousness. This is the appeal that we have to such states. But those states of those kinds of chidabhasas, of reflections, samanya reflections, without any vrits, without any modification, is not the remedy for neutralization of ignorance, of varana and vikshepa, okay? So one is reflecting the mind, and the other is reflect on the thoughts of the mind. So one is reflecting the mind, which became thought-free mind, okay? So the Jiva Atma, I would say Brahman, on the left side of the chart, it appears as Kutastha, and Kutastha is the most primordial original consciousness reflect, which is nicely illustrated as the sattvic reflector, the mind of yoga in deep bliss of samadhi, or the savikalpa samadhi, okay? So yet we know that if there is not a vritti in there, what is the vritti fundamentally? The vritti that is going to neutralize the ignorance, wants that mental reflection, mental condition, this pure reflector modifies. When it modifies, and then knowledge and ignorance are going to appear again. And the knowledge has to be used to neutralize ignorance. So we need a vrit, we need a thought, and the thought is Aham Brahmasmi. Tativamasi. I am that limitless original consciousness. I am Kutastha consciousness. I am not the vritti consciousness. I'm not the consciousness modified by thoughts. I am pure limitless consciousness. And only this vritti consciousness that is presented here as vritti, antakarana, the mind, the ego, the mind, the subtle body, with a pratibimba, with a vritti pratibimba, with a reflection containing mental modifications. And we need a proper mental modification to be inimical and to cancel that modification that says, I am the small and inadequate and limited body-mind complex. We need one vritti in the mind, in the reflector. So only that would be the remedy to neutralize and cancel avarana and avidya. Antakarana vritti pratibimba is visesa chidabhasa. So it is a modification, is a visesa. Visesa is a distinct, specific vritti, modification, okay? It's became the individual, okay? It's no longer just a reflection such as the state of samadhi. It has a modification, it has a vritti, it has a thought, distinct thought. Why it's used the vishesha, distinct? Because you need distinct thoughts to neutralize all kinds of different ignorance. You understand? So we need thoughts around chemistry to neutralize, to be inimical, and to remove the ignorance in respect to chemistry. And we need certain thoughts to neutralize thoughts which are inimical to other thoughts. We need aham brahmasmi as the thought inimical to the thought I am the small, limited, inadequate jiva, to destroy that illness. So we need a remedy, and the remedy is the vritti pratibimba shaitanya, vritti pratibimba chidabhasa. So, and then what is inimical to ignorance, to avarana and avidya? It's not consciousness, because consciousness lives with it. And it's not conscious, it's not reflect consciousness under the spell of ignorance. Because if it's the spell of, under the spell of ignorance, it's not going to even recognize its own self-ignorance, okay? So it's not pure limitless consciousness in a certain state, and it's not consciousness as modified by vrits, totally conditioned by self-ignorance. Because have you ever seen somebody who is self-ignorant saying, I am self-ignorance? You need a little shed of light to begin recognize your ignorance. You understand? So as Swamiji said before, the student is the one who began becoming aware of its self-ignorance, and then it looks for the knowledge to remove that ignorance. That knowledge is antakarana vritti pratibimba chidabhasa. So far, so good. Are we following? Any questions, any doubts? Okay, therefore, vritti, jnana, okay, jnana, knowledge, vritti jnana, or in other words, specific jnana, okay, specific jnana, vishesha jnana, or thoughts, knowledge, jnana, which is knowledge, modified by some notions and concepts, okay, specific notions and concepts. So this jnana, this knowingness, with contents of thoughts and notions in regards to certain knowledge, is what is going to be opposed to ignorance and be the neutralizer or the inimical to the enemy of ignorance. Thus, vritti pratibimba shaitanya is inimical to ajnana, to ignorance. So knowledge, pratibimba shaitanya, reflected consciousness, the antakarana, the subtle body containing, certain thoughts which are inimical or contradictory or neutralizers of certain ignorance, is the only remedy. Okay, is the only thing that can destroy ajnana, okay? And then he gives a very simple example. Pot thought is inimical to pot ignorance. Pot thought is inimical to pot ignorance. So how amazing, okay? So I have never had the thought of a pot. You remember the saying that the object is not different from the knowledge we have of the object, okay? So if there is an object, this object is acknowledged by us due to the mental, the collective, cultured, conditioned mind. So the existence of the object is not different from the knowledge of the object. Okay, so if I have a pot, and the pot brings about a pot salt, okay, and then there is no ignorance of the pot. The very pot, the very thought of the pot destroys any possible potential ignorance in respect to the thought. Pot thought is inimical to existence of the pot. It is inimical to the pot ignorance, because I have the thought. The thought of an object is not different from the object, because the object needs to be validated in our mind as the thought object. Therefore, Kutastha vritti pratibimba chidabhasa is kustata anyana nazayati. Okay, therefore, Kutastha vritti pratibimba chidabhasa is the remedy, okay, the destroyer of Kutastha anyana, okay, the individual jiva. On the right side of our chart, he's suffering from anyana, ignorance. And then we have those vrittis in the mind of reflect consciousness as it appears on the right side of the chart, as pure consciousness appearing as reflect consciousness with the knowledge I am the limitless original consciousness, okay, is the only remedy, okay, to remove the ignorance in the Kutastha. The Kutastha is reflect consciousness, may be under the spell of ignorance, may be under the spell of knowledge, and only those vrittis, those notions, those statements, those teachings of the Upanishads are going to be the remedy to remove or to cancel or to destroy anyana in the mind, in the Kutastha, which is reflect consciousness. You see, reflect consciousness either is aware of its true nature as original consciousness, or it is totally unaware. If it is totally unaware, it's ignorant, and it may not even be aware of ignorance, because it never came to the person that, oh, in truth, you are not the limited mind, you are the limitless consciousness. Once that thought comes and visits the person, and then the person has a different kind of ignorance, okay? And then this person wants to know about this limitless nature, which is supposedly said to be my true nature. Huh? And then what I need those vrittis, I need those teachings, I need those notions and concepts which are going to correct the notions I have in respect to what I am, my true nature. So what is going to remove is not original consciousness, it's not pure reflected consciousness, it's reflect consciousness with the teachings of the Upanishads, because the teachings are the only remedy that, in that case, is inimical to avidya and avarana. Otherwise, original consciousness and even reflect consciousness is going to coexist with avarana and avidya with no problem about that. The only thing that's going to dispel avidya and avarana are the vrittis, and the vrittis means to say the teachings of the Upanishads, the Mahavakyas of the Upanishads, with the help of a guru. So far, so good? Therefore, when you take chemistry as the subject, and when you start chemistry, the teacher produces in your mind the chemistry vrit, those concepts around the science of chemistry. When those vrits are generated in the mind, they naturally are going to remove ignorance. In the same way, the light in the head of that guy for the wedding was removing ignorance, darkness, wherever he was looking for darkness. So, and why this vritti? Why this vritti is going to remove ignorance? Why this vritti? This is a very important point here. We know consciousness does not remove the vritti of avidya, does not the wrong vritti or avidya or avarana. Consciousness, absolute consciousness, unmanifest, no chance, because there is no question of the mithya for consciousness. There is no question of duality. There is no question of the cosmos. So what makes it, what allows it to cancel ignorance? Okay, it is the fact that knowledge and ignorance both belong to the same order of reality. Vrits, knowledge, and good knowledge and wrong knowledge, I am the body-mind complex. Good knowledge, such as I am limitless consciousness, bad knowledge, as I am the limited jiva, they both belong to the same order of reality. You cannot dispel the darkness of the winter in the bedroom of someone dreaming with the bright sun of the summer. That light in the dream will never dispel the cold and the darkness in the room of the dreamer, because they belong to two suborders of reality. Knowledge and ignorance, they both belong to the same order of reality. Okay? So knowledge is going to dispel self-ignorance. The teachings, the vrits, are going to dispel self-ignorance. And then the individual is going to be the knower of knowledge and ignorance. And then the person will say, no, my knowledge in respect to this and that is still prevails. I know nothing about science, for example, but my knowledge in respect to the self is removed. Okay? So that knowledge was removed. And what has removed that knowledge? Okay, but that knowledge is, that ignorance is not ignorance, it's mithya ignorance, is an apparent ignorance. Yeah? Oh yes, how did you remove that? I removed that with an apparent knowledge, because the knowledge revealed, they are revealed within mithya. Okay? They are just mithya knowledge to remove mithya ignorance. Therefore, pure limitless consciousness is satya. Pure limitless in principle, as pure reflect consciousness in its nature, is still satya. That's why we can say Jiva Atma is Paramatma. But the moment that vrits, aham, certain thoughts in respect to what I am and what is the world around me, when they come, when they emerge, immediately I am under the spell of ignorance. With rare exceptions, we find someone in the young age knowing Aham Brahmasmi, like was the case with Ramana Maharaj at the age of 16 or 17. Therefore, when you take chemistry, you're going to remove the ignorance with respect to chemistry. The teacher is going to help with that. That specific knowledge destroys that specific ignorance, in this case, in respect to chemistry. Therefore, to destroy ignorance, what is needed is you should ask the question, ignorance of what? Yeah? When we talk about ignorance in our Vedantic circles, we always refer to self-ignorance, right, Claudio? Nobody needs to be offended, feel offended. Sometimes people feel offended in the beginning. Now it is about self-ignorance, and it's a common ignorance. Everybody suffers from this ignorance. Yeah. So we need to ask what kind of ignorance, yeah, to destroy ignorance. The most fundamental question is ignorance of what? Yeah? And then when one understands that no matter how much knowledge we have of the phenomenal world, there is a fundamental ignorance that needs to be destroyed. Otherwise, one is going to continue suffering of samsara. And this ignorance is self-ignorance. To destroy ignorance, we need to know what is the most fundamental ignorance that needs to be destroyed. Then you have to go to a guru when you are aware that that is the ignorance that is painful. And through the teachings of the Mahavakyas, of the Upanishads, the final declarations properly unfold, you should generate those vrittis in your mind so that it is at our disposal to again and again neutralize ignorance. Ignorance of what? Of the self, my fundamental, free, limitless nature. Therefore, go to a guru that can teach the Mahavakyas until you have this established body of vrittis, that are going to be there vastly already neutralizing your self-ignorance. And whatever more self-ignorance may surface, those vrittis are going to be naturally neutralizing, destroying those notions, those mistaken vrittis. And this new vritti, this vritti that is the remedy for the ignorant vritti, is Aham Brahmasmi. And then only the ignorance of Aham Brahma Asmi will go. So I am ignorance of my nature as Brahman, and that ignorance only goes when I can claim Aham Brahmasmi very, very gently and without any shade of vanity about that. Vidyaranya says, if you have any doubt, you go to a yoni, and the yoni alone should be free of Kutastha Anyana, of this ahamkara, I forgot this. A long time I did not mention this antakarana, the subtle body, the whole complex of the subtle body, the functions. So only the guru. Okay. Wait a minute. Go to a yoni, and he is going to free you from this kutastha ignorance. The ignorance in the mind, the reflect consciousness under the spell of ignorance. The difference between anyani and yani, vritti, pratibimba, chaitanya, has taken place in the yani, and that vrit has not come to an anyani. For avidya and avarana, the enemy is viveka, so discrimination. So the teachings, the Mahavakyas, the unfoldment of such teachings by the gurus, by the teachers. So avidya, this cosmic, original, beginningless, anadi, ignorance, can be destroyed, and it is destroyed by the teachings of the Upanishads, okay? Those vrittis, and we get those vrittis from the scriptures with the help of the yanis, the guru yanis. It is only this knowledge born off of discrimination that leads to the correct knowledge or perception of one's true nature. The avarana shakti affects only the jiva and not the kutastha chaitanya. Once this knowledge is gained, is firmly established, the suffering result from this wrong identification comes to an end. Vrit anyana alone destroys ignorance. Vrit yana Okay, no mind does not destroy ignorance. Savikalpa samadhi does not destroy ignorance. You need vrittis, you need good concepts, okay, to destroy the mistaken concepts. They are both within mithya, okay? So you need mithya knowledge to destroy mithya ignorance, to leave the individual free from both aspects of mithya. So how are you going to be free from knowledge and ignorance if they fundamentally, they coexist without you knowing? So you need a certain knowledge that's going to destroy your ignorance. And then the person say, fuck, if I lose my ignorance and my knowledge because they just neutralize one another, and then who am I? So you are that beyond knowledge and ignorance. You are the knower of knowledge and ignorance. This is the bottom line. We are all driving to that simple understanding. I am the knower of knowledge and ignorance. That's why scriptural study becomes so indispensable, more than important. What we want is knowledge to destroy ignorance. In the mind alone, Vrityana takes place. So it is in the mind, the people who say, oh, this is mind, I don't want to know mind, I want to have experience of no mind. It is in the mind alone, this vritti, this knowledge takes place. In a wise person, may you see this as a fact. In a wise person, in a jnani, you may see this as a fact. We stop here. I wasn't able to finish everything, but it's so lovely. I hope Lynn is going to enjoy as well later on watching in the video. I don't know about you guys, but I enjoyed very much to go into the depths of the subtle distinction of Kutastha and Jiva.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you, Arlinda.
Yeah, very, very clarifying. In these words, it's very, very clarifying.
Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you, Lord. Namaste, my good friends. Mark, I haven't managed yet to open the file, but I will keep trying here. I will keep you posted, okay? And we meet again. What's the day?
Good.
Today is Monday. Yeah, we meet soon on Thursday, okay? Namaste once again.
Okay. Thanks. God bless. Bye now.